Hi, everyone. I'm Coach Chris, and today I am going to be talking about the Boston Marathon application for the 2024 race, which will be the 128th running of the Boston Marathon. This is a little bit about me in case you are curious, a couple of tidbits here. You can also see my website there if you have questions about coaching, or you would like to follow up with me on questions from this presentation, then that's a good way to get in touch with me. All my info is there. Let's dive in. All right, these are the topics we're going to cover today: the application window, the qualifying period, acceptance notification, registration history, and then the cut. Dun dun dun. Everybody wants to hear about that? Okay, application window. This is a 5-day span. It takes place in September. This is the same general time frame that it has been. Some of the things have changed in terms of duration, but this will be a 5-day span. It begins on Monday, September 11th, and it ends on Friday, September 15th. Do note the times. The time for the first application to be entered is 10 a.m. Eastern, and the cutoff time to enter your application is 5 p.m. Eastern on Friday. The Eastern time zone is a key fact. Do not, particularly if you live somewhere else, don't lose track of the time. This is all based on the time zone for Boston, right there on the Eastern Seaboard. So make sure you note that it is 5 p.m. Eastern Friday. Don't wait until you get home from work after a long day and you've been held up and you've made dinner and you've done this, that, and the other to go and do your application. I really recommend everybody take care of it before that last minute there. Friday morning, really don't even cut it close at all. You don't want to be that person that remembers all of a sudden Friday night. Don't be that person. All right. So the BAA put out a statement and a notification that goes into the registration details and process. This is something they've done year after year, and it always happens in the summer, and it happened recently. So this is an actual cutout from that statement. If you want to read the full statement, it is located on the BAA website. It will be there for years. If you want to go back and read any of the past from the last few years, you can read those as well. These are the new ones are located on the homepage, and then the older ones get stored under the news section. I always find this stuff sort of interesting. I've highlighted a couple of things here from this statement. The registration and application takes place within the Athletes Village, which is just this profile section that the BAA has created. You can go and set up your own profile there now if you like. If you've run any of the recent Boston Marathon or BAA 5K or 10K or half, you have done all of these things within the Athletes Village already, so you already have a profile there, which is helpful. Do note that the qualifying time is based on your age on race day, which is Patriots Day. There is a list of future Boston marathons. So if you have a birthday coming up within the next few years and you are going to be changing your age bracket, you can look up what the exact date is. If you have a birthday in April, that is, something you probably want to make note of. And that is also useful for people who have birthdays at other times of the year, just know that that your age on race day is the age for the qualifying. Do note, I underlined this. It is not a first come, first serve process here. So there's no rush to go and submit your application first thing on Monday morning. You certainly can if you like. But you know, if you do it on Tuesday or Wednesday or Thursday, that's fine as well. As long as you get it in before that Friday 5 p.m. Eastern deadline, they will all be weighed and counted the same. So there's no, a special hurry to be the first person to submit your application. These are the qualifying standards for 2024. They have remained the same. I just put this up here in case people haven't looked this up recently. They are also listed on the BAA website, of course, and this is the second year for the non-binary category for those that fall into that. This is the second year for those standards to be in place. Okay, another takeaway from the statement that was released by the BAA. If you have a Boston Marathon streak, that is a streak that is 10 Boston Marathons in a row. It has to be consecutive, 10 or more. Then you get to register early, which is one of those cool perks. You get to register starting August 28th to September 1st. And you are not subject to the cut if you are one of those people that is a Boston streaker, which is really one of the best perks probably of the Boston Marathon streak. I think most people would agree with that statement. That means, what does that mean? That means that you just have to run your qualifying time, period. That's it. You can have 1 second, but you don't need even 1 second. Any extra time doesn't help or hurt. All you have to do is make that qualifying time and you're in, period. End of story, which is super cool and something that people like to shoot for, especially if you love the Boston Marathon. So this is a group of approximately 500 people. We don't have the exact numbers on that because the BAA hasn't released that, but that is a rough estimate. Obviously, this number grows every year, and some people are removed from that as well. But on the whole, I think it is growing. The qualifying period. So the qualifying period determines if you've met the BQ standard, or if you've met the time standard and you have a BQ, you have to have done it within the qualifying period. So the BAA outlines what the qualifying period is every year. It really hasn't changed that much, but it is helpful to know. During COVID, it was obviously weird, like everything was weird during COVID. But since then, everything, we're back to normal. So we are back to normal here yet again. The period started on September 1st, 2022. And it goes through September 15th, 2023, which is that last day to register, 5 p.m. Eastern, remember. That means the qualifying period is 1 year and 15 days, as you can see. So there is an overlap of 15 days. What does that overlap of 15 days mean? That means that there is a double dip period. This is the double dip qualifying window. A lot of times people talk about this because if you run a race within that double dip period, you can use one BQ race for 2 Boston Marathons. It's a great 2-for-1 special here. You have to have run a qualifying time for your age and gender, obviously, and it needs to fall within those 15 days. There are actually several races that fall within that. Most of them naturally fall on the weekend there. So Saturday, September 2nd, Sunday, September 3rd, Saturday, September 9th, and Sunday, September 10th, for the most part, are when those races fall. You can search by dates for qualifying races. The two websites I recommend you look at are findmymarathon.com and runningintheusa.com. There's also Marathon Guide you can look at, but any of these options that are certified race courses that fall within the 15-day window would qualify for Boston 2 years with one race. So worth looking into that, particularly if you are a person that, you know, doesn't like to run a marathon every single fall or every single spring, then this is something I recommend you look into. All right, now we're on to the notification. There is a two-part process for notification of who's in and who's out for the Boston Marathon. Step one is the BAA formally announces what the cut is, if there is any cut. They announce that via social media. That will be on Instagram, that will be on Twitter, that will be on their Facebook page. So many options there to find that information. They will also post a statement on their website, which will be available on the homepage for you to read. And this will tell you, this will be the first sign, and it will come rather quickly and tell you whether you are in or not. The second step is emails. Emails will go out to every individual telling you whether you, giving you the formal declaration that you are in or not into the race. This process is delayed more because it can only occur after your race and your time is verified. The BAA does go through and make sure your time has been run on a certified course. They verify that your age is the correct age for your time standard and your name matches your age and birth date and all of these things. This process can be somewhat delayed if, in certain circumstances, if you have, say, a very common name like a John Smith, and there's, 4 John Smiths that have applied. One may be 23 and one may be 53. And so the BAA has to figure out which John Smith is applying with which time and make sure that they are have actually qualified with the appropriate time standard. And so in those certain circumstances, you could be waiting a little bit longer for your email. Another example would be for the ladies particularly who might have taken on their husband's name, and so their last name has changed. If the name that you raced under and you qualified with, say it's Jane Smith, and now you're a Jane Weber, you married a Weber and your last name changed, then the BAA has to go through the manual process of verifying that you are the same Jane Smith / Jane Weber that ran this qualifying time with this birthday and submitted the application. So it can be a little bit of time depending on certain circumstances for you to receive that email. The email is a comfort, and it does absolutely confirm things. However, you will know based on the BAA statement whether you are in or not, and presumably you know if you actually ran a BQ time. Unless you submit a fake application, unless you cheated and submitted someone else's time, then if you've made the cut, if you are under the cut time, then you're in, and you know that from the BAA statement, which comes out not that long after the application deadline. So most especially for the last 2 years where there was no cutoff at all, I know there were people worrying for days and weeks that they hadn't received their email yet. You don't need the email to guarantee that you're in. You just need to know that you ran the time. And so don't be alarmed if it takes, a week or even 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 to get that email. You will get it. The BAA will go through every application, and then we'll be contacting everybody. I've gone back to 2015 and made note of when this cut announcement has come. As you can see, it's been the shortest time is 4 days, the longest time is 10 days. This is the exact breakdown. It's never been that long, and in recent, recent past, it was a little over 4 days, 4 days and 18 hours. So really, um, you know, every day and every hour of the wait is, frustrating and feels grueling, but I promise it'll be over quickly. And as I said before in the previous section, as long as you know you've made the cut, if there is a cut, whatever the time is, say it's, 1 minute, 7 seconds. If you ran a qualifying time that is 1 minute, 8 seconds, under your BQ, then you're in. You know that you're in from the BAA statement that will come out. So you don't have to worry about waiting for that email. It is good to get that email, but the statement will tell you all that you need to know about whether you're in or out. This is a little bit about how registration has changed over the years. 2011 was really the catalyst for the change. The field capacity was reached in 8 hours, 3 minutes, and that was a record. And that basically put the BAA on notice to make some changes and to refine the process. So 2012 brought about multiple changes all at once. The most significant, I will note, is that the standards were tightened for the first time since 1980. That is obviously going to cut out a number of people when the standards change. And so that was one of the main things that they did in 2012 to really cut down the field before applications even come in. The other thing that they did in 2012 was they brought about a 2-week rolling registration. Several of us have gone through that because that was in place for many years and really has only changed post-COVID. But it's been simplified, and I think it's really a lot better just being in the 5-day span. But the other thing that they brought about in 2012, this is when they introduced the 10-year streak process and the stipulations for that, which is, of course, to recognize and reward people that are Boston loyalists. And I think that is a really great program and a great incentive for those who are, interested in that. This is an interesting thing to note. All of these changes that occurred in 2012 meant that the registration window extended beyond the initial 2-week period, and it extended all the way until mid-October. So the changes that the BAA made to really reorganize and simplify in many ways the application process and make it more fair, that really did occur in a big way for that 2012 registration, in that it took almost a full month for the field to fill up. So that is quite the change from 8 hours to then 4 weeks. The other time that the standards were tightened, it was in September of 2019. The standards were changed across the board to be 5 minutes faster than they were previously. A lot of us were around for that, and we remember it. So it wasn't that long ago. So, but since that 2019 change, the standards have remained the same. All right. Now we're going to talk about the field and the cut and the things that impact that. I just want everybody to note, this is important to keep in mind throughout this. When the BAA says what the field size will be, they typically will announce what the total field size will be. That does not mean that everybody will be that does not mean that everybody in the field will be a time qualifier. In fact, there will be several thousand that will absolutely not be time qualifiers. And the breakdown is roughly 80% time qualifiers and 20% to charity bibs, sponsor bibs, elite bibs, and other designations. But the point is that whenever you look at what the field size will be, it is not that is every single person that is accepted to the Boston Marathon race itself. That does not mean that they are time qualifiers. The field size has remained pretty consistent over the years. For the most part, it is around 30,000. It has been some instances where the field size was larger, as I've noted here. April 2020, the field size was actually increased to 31,500. And then for the October 2021 race, which was during the COVID protocols, and when the race was moved to the fall, that race size was 20,000. So the field size is definitely something that impacts the number of people that can be accepted, and that impacts the number that the cut will be. A lot of people like to talk about the number of qualifiers overall, the number of Boston qualifiers in total. I personally like to look at and consider the number of applicants. Not everybody that has a Boston qualifying time will apply for the race. And some people that have one Boston qualifying time have two or three or four to pick from. And of course, you can only submit one application. So when you look at those stats and you look at the numbers for how many Boston qualifying times exist per year, it is informative, I think, yes, but it's really not telling you all that much about what the cut will be necessarily. One thing I am pointing out here is just how the acceptance rate for time qualifiers has changed over time. That pure number itself, there was, as you can see, a trend where the time was steadily going down and down and down, and the BAA was allocating a few more bibs to charities and sponsors and elites and other types of bibs like that, and a few less bibs to time qualifiers. That was the trend. And then, of course, the trend reversed. COVID happened, all kinds of things have happened and changed, and circumstances have changed in the world. And so the BAA also made some changes to the numbers that were of time qualifiers that were accepted. All right. So, as I mentioned prior, this is the number of acceptant versus the number that applied. That is what determines what the actual cut is, right? So it doesn't matter necessarily how many people have earned a Boston qualifier within that year. What matters is how fast are the people that have applied. So if you have a whole bunch of people that are 20 minutes under and they apply, and you are only, say, 30 seconds under, then obviously your chances go down. But the quality and quantity of the field is really what determines who gets in and who gets out. So the number of applicants has changed over the years in the same way that the number has a number of accepted time qualifiers into the field. As you can see here, I've made these handy dandy little arrows. The number of applicants were all on a steady increase. They were really increasing quite a bit by several thousand over the years. Up until two things happened. One is the standards changed in 2019, but then two, it was like a double whammy. COVID happened right after that. And so those two things really threw the trends out the window, and everything went on its head. And as you can see here, for the last 2 years, every single person that applied and submitted their time to the BAA was accepted. You could be 1 second under your Boston qualifying time, you got in. And so I really recommend everybody submit an application. It doesn't matter how little you think your chances are. You could be that person that is right on the line, and you don't want to miss out because you just made an assumption without even trying. So the other thing I do want to note is, even though the last 2 years have seen everybody get in, the number of applicants has gone up. I would anticipate that the number of applicants for this year for the 2024 race will increase. I don't know. We're going to see what happens, but I anticipate that would be the trend, purely because as we've noticed in the world around us, things seem to really be resuming the trends that were occurring before COVID. We're finally getting back to that. So I do anticipate that that's how things are going to go, but we will have to wait and see. So I will be able to update this after we have our registration period and after it closes. This is what the actual time cutoff was over the years. I went all the way back to 2011. 2011 was the first time that a time cutoff, well, the first time in recent past that there was a time cutoff. As you can see, there have been those cutoffs have been steadily increasing until what? Until that big standard change occurred in September of 2019, when the standards were tightened by 5 minutes across the board. In 2018, the application, the time that you needed to run under was 4 minutes 52 seconds. So it was very close to that 5-minute time. So the BAA, in essence, really only changed things by 8 seconds. And so, it may seem to a lot of people like that was harsh or that was drastic. But in my estimation, it was not. And the other thing that really bears that out is that even with the time standards changed by 5 minutes, there was still a cut for that 2019 race, and that cut was 1 minute 39 seconds. They had 3,161 people that they were not able to put into the race for the 2019 application period. They also in that period, for that race, they enlarged the race field up to 3,000. 31,500. So the cut for that race would have been even larger. Uh, Again, reinforcing that I do not think the BAA made any, real drastic decision with tightening the standards by 5 minutes there. But as we all know, COVID changed everything. And so what happened when COVID threw everything on its head and the time standards were changed? All of a sudden, the demand for the race went down, and you can see that very clearly here. In September 2017, 2018, 2019, the BAA was looking at 27,000, 28,000, 30,000 applicants. And in the last 2 years, they're back down to 22,000 and 23,000. So the demand issue there is really what has been changing the outcomes for the cut. That's why I like to point that out. We, you know, anything could happen for this next registration period, and there's a lot that could affect things, how many apply, that are really global factors, economic factors, things that the BAA or myself or you have absolutely no control over. So we'll see how things shake out. But I do think it's interesting to look at all of these things and to see what those numbers are. All right, we're wrapping it up here. This is a picture of the finish line for the Boston Marathon, one of the greatest finish lines in the entire world, in my opinion. I think maybe the greatest finish line in the entire world. If you have questions for me, I have posted my email address here. You are welcome to send me an email. It can be about anything in this presentation, or it can just be about running or training in general. It doesn't have to be about the Boston Marathon at all. It could be about something else entirely. I hope you've enjoyed this presentation. I hope you learned something. If nothing else, you certainly got some numbers thrown at you. Thank you for watching, and have a good rest of your day, evening, week, year, and hope to see you at the Boston Marathon 2024.